Here we are, the beginning of day 2, ready for our sermon preparation, and we start with a blank desktop, and I want to show how we get the layout and build it for the first time so we'll be ready for the future. Before we get into the layout itself, I want to share with you a few things about day 2's sermon process. Day 2 is all about exposition of the passage. Our goal here is to determine the context for the passage. And as we study, we want to find the relevant stories from the Bible that shed light on the passage, read what others have written so that you can look beyond your own cultural perspective and expand your own understanding of what is really happening in the story. The result, at the end of the day, you should be able to take your observations and transform the passage outline into a timeless outline. So your timeless outline will turn historical statements into universal statements. The timeless outline makes the historical events relevant to any audience at any time in any culture. So the timeless outline will answer this basic question of what happens now. So with that basic overview, let's take a look at what content will make up our layout. As in day 1, we want to open our favorites because that's going to give us access to our notes and clippings and an ability to organize any new content that we create. We also want to open our highlighting in case we want to create some new palettes or some other highlighting as we go along. And we also want to have the information window open as well. By default, it opens on the right. We'll just click and drag that over here to the left, and now we have that side of the layout. Now the next key part to our day 2 layout is going to be another custom guide. And here you can see I have created a Homiletics day 2 guide for the exposition of the passage. Of course, it's blank right now. If we enter the passage we're going to study, in this case Galatians 1, and then hit enter, we'll get some results, and I'll show you what content makes up the day 2 custom passage guide. Right now that the passage guide has filled out, let's take a look at what's in it. First, of course, there's the My Content section, and notice that here we've got notes and clippings. Both of these were from our day 1 study. So if I go back here to Bible Studies, under New Testament, and Galatians, where I organized my notes, you'll see there's the content, but it shows up now in Logos because it searches and finds all my content. Below that we have parallel passages. This gives us an idea of what other passages in the Bible are directly quoted or related to Galatians chapter 1. Below that we have cross-references, and this gives us a few books and a few resources that deal with cross-references that are theologically connected to the passage, and also builds a dynamic list using Logos technology to come up with important cross-references. Below that I have a quick topics section, and this will give us a good idea of what topics are important or relevant to this passage. So if I click here, for example, on the topic of Christology, Logos then will open up several of my Bible dictionaries, and if I hover, I get a little bit of idea of the content in that particular dictionary, and also if I hover over the name, I can get the name and information about which dictionary I'm looking at. Below that, you'll notice the last 3 sections of the passage guide are commentaries that are outline type commentaries. These tend to be commentaries that I've seen give more either passage outlines, or they just kind of give some very basic rough information about the passage itself. Below that, there's expository commentaries. These tend to be commentaries that focus on the culture, history, background, and tend to get into some theological interpretation of the passage. And the final section below that is really core theology. Now I notice that that's a collection of books as opposed to a collection of commentaries. So a collection is basically books that are not versified, that is, books that aren't tagged to connect to the scripture, but we'll definitely talk about scripture passages. In contrast, the commentaries section of the passage guide gives us access to all the commentaries that are tagged to the verse structures of the Bible. That's called versified. So in my last video, I showed you how to create a custom passage guide, so I won't do that again, but what may be helpful in this video as we develop this layout is to see a little bit of how we actually make a collection. So again, we've seen how to make a passage guide, but how do we get the collections that are a part of each of these sections? So I'm just going to take a minute and show you how those were created. One of the most powerful features in Logos 4 is the ability to create dynamic collections. And then the ability, of course, to use those collections all throughout in the area of searches and, as we've seen, custom passage guides. So before I give you an overview of how I make collections, I want to point out to you where on the internet you can find some more detailed instructions on this process. So if you open up your web browser and you go to wiki.logos.com, you'll find this really helpful user-created database of information. And if you just scroll down, go here to the table of contents. And in that table of contents, you'll see a lot of good information, but scroll down to this section about tools. And here you'll see the key that we're going to focus on, which is collections. So I'm going to click collections. And here you see a great description of what collections are all about. Find information on how to create it, including visual instructions, editing collections as well as there, and adding individual resources to collections. And most importantly, it shows you a lot of the important filterable fields. In other words, these are the fields that you are going to use in creating the collections. And so there's a whole list there of all those fields that you need to know. All right, so spend some time at wiki.logos.com and you will definitely get some good information beyond what I'm able to do in this video. Now let's head back to Logos. Roughly, to create a collection, you're going to need two things open on your desktop. This is how I do my layout. The first is I want to open the collections tool itself. That's from the tools menu. And then I want to go to the library icon and I'm going to open that in a new tab. And I have this open because the library because it allows me a reminder first of what all my filterable tags are. So if I right click on the menu item, it shows me there's the image, type, title, author, my tags, ratings. The list goes on. Some of the other key ones are subjects and even series and making collections. But you'll see in this video we have some collections of core theology, but also commentaries are divided into outline commentaries and also exegetical and expository and homiletical commentaries. So let me just show you quickly how I did those collections because those are key. If I go to my library and I put in the word type commentary, that's going to show me how many all my commentaries in my library. But now each of these obviously has a much different approach. Some are language focused and will give you good insight into the Hebrew or Greek. Others will give you backgrounds on history, theology, culture, and others are far more homiletical. That is, they're basically a lot of times just sermons manuscripted and put into a collection. And then, of course, Logos tags it so it connects with the Bible. So those collections I've created my own tag, In this case, this example at the top here is expository. And in the information window, you can see that this is where I can just simply go in, add a tag. So I just went through my commentaries and decided if they're language-based, that is exegetical, if they are expository, that is dealing a little bit more with the theology or cultural or interpretive type issues, or homiletical, which again is more sermons that have been turned into a manuscript, or sermons that were preached somewhere and now just bound together as a commentary. And so I went through and tagged all of those and then used that over here in my collection. So come back over, I'm going to click open, and I'm going to look at exegetical commentaries. And you see when I did this, I created a title that just says exegetical commentaries. And in this window here, where it says start with research is matching, I just simply typed in my tag, then colon, and exegetical. And that gave me all of my exegetical commentaries down in this list. Now that you've seen how we created the collections that are included in the Day 2 passage guide, we need to finish putting together our final layout. So we're back here with where we left off, and let me just click and open one of the commentaries that shows up first as one of the outline commentaries. Now as I start to read through these, I want to be able to take notes or remind myself of key phrases or paragraphs of information that I'll use later in creating my timeless outline. So how do I do that? Well, the best way, as we saw the other day, is to go up here to File, and I want to create a new clippings. I'm going to drag this down to the bottom to share this part of the screen with my passage guide. And I'm going to title this for my homiletics Day 2, and this will be Galatians chapter 1 as well. And as I begin to work through my commentaries, I might decide that I want to keep this section, so I'm going to add that to the clippings for my homiletics Day 2. And I might get to my expository commentaries and I work through all those. Again, I find some key sections. I want to add those to my clippings as well. Now I get to things such as my journals and other parts of my core theology. I read through and I look, I say, well, this is maybe some important lexical information that I want. And I'm going to add that to my clippings. So there is the content of my clippings, and that is how the layout will look, except for one thing. We noted that the goal of today, the result, should be a timeless outline. So what I'm going to need to do is create a new note file, and I'm just going to name this homiletics Day 2 and also Galatians 1. And inside that note, I'm going to begin to prepare my timeless outline with the content that I want. And I'm not going to have time to go into this video set on how to do an outline and how to create all that content, but I just want to again let you see how the content is laid out. And we'll drag this down here so it doesn't take up the screen space. And we also want to make sure too, just to be organized, to drag the tabs of this content over here to my Galatians folder so that later on I make sure I have a way to access all the notes or clippings and research that I've put together over my study period. And that's it for the layout on Day 2.